news broke yesterday that WBC super middleweight champion Franchon Crews has just inked a promotional deal with Golden Boy Promotions. Franchon Crews, who became a world champion in the super middleweight division, having only 5 professional fights, one of those fights being a loss to Claressa Shields in what was both her and Clarissa's professional debut. And when she squared off
against Maricela
Cornejo in her last fight, it was for the WBC title. And Maricela Cornejo, she's got way more professional fights than Franchon. Maricela's got about 14 professional fights, 2 of them being losses, now 3. You know, and you think about that, the kind of skill that Franchon Crews brings to the table, that yes, she lost to Claressa Shields, but who hasn't, right?
Right.
All things considered, she's still a very formidable fighter, having become a world champion in so few pro fights. She's definitely got the skills, has the talent, but her problem, and the problem not exclusive to her so much as the other champions at the weight and any contenders with aspirations of becoming champions. The real issue in the super middleweight division itself is that there is a scarcity of talent. There is a scarcity of opponent choices. So this is a hurdle that, in spite of signing to Golden Boy Promotions and inking that deal with that company, this is a hurdle that Franchon Crews is going to have to work to overcome. That, you know, you can have a good promotional company behind you and they can have a platform for your fights, but if there's a scarcity of opponents in the weight class, there's
a problem.
That, you know, that's a problem for everybody. Now, my proposition remains the same in regards to Franchon Crews and just about any talent, any champion in the middleweight to super middleweight divisions. I'm of the opinion that, you know, whatever fighter in those divisions is holding a world title, fighters like Alicia Napoleon, fighters like Eileen Cedar Ruiz, who very recently became the IBF champion at super middleweight, I'm of the opinion that these fighters, they need to just say fuck it and do a round-robin kind of thing to where they're all fighting each other, because they're the 3 most notoriable fighters in the super middleweight division. They really can't afford to not fight each other, to stay away from each other. If you're going to get yourself any kind of attention as a reigning champion, you need to challenge those that are on equal footing with you, and that doesn't just apply to Franchon, it applies to Alicia, and it applies to Eileen Cedar Ruiz. And, you know, whosoever wants to pick up that vacant WBO title that's up there, hey, it's the same fucking deal. You know, it's the same deal. Because at the end of the day, with Claressa Shields having left both the super middleweight and middleweight, you know, because now news already broke that Claressa's going to be going down to 54. She's going to be contending for the vacant WBO title. We'll talk about that a little later on. But with Claressa Shields being the biggest name anywhere around that weight, having left those divisions, it's up to the fighters now. It's up to Franchon, it's up to Alicia, it's up to Eileen to really make a name for themselves in her absence. If you're going to get yourself any kind of attention, you've got to go for the gusto. Now, the good news is that with a promotional company like Golden Boy Promotions behind her, that can maybe help assuade the other champions at the weight to come out. You know, lure those champions out. Put those fights on DAZN. Get Franchon Crews the kind of exposure that she needs so that people can recognize her, not just as someone that Claressa Shields fought in her professional debut, but what is a current, active, reigning champion. That's what it's going to take, ladies and gentlemen. It's nothing against the fighters. It's not that super middleweight doesn't have talented fighters in it. It's just that there is a scarcity of opponent options, alternative, mean in-between fights overall. Thus, every fight's got to be a major fight. Every move's got to be a major move. And in the case of Franchon, you know what? If the super middleweight division is not doing you any kind of service, then you might have to go down to middleweight. You know that Claressa's not there anymore, right? So that means the titles that she had, she unified the entire weight class. She's going down to 54. That means the titles that she had in that weight class, they're likely going to go vacant, in which case Franchon Crews can capitalize on that opportunity. Maybe you have a fight with a Nikki Adler, a Christina Hammer, those kinds of opponents. Maybe you have a fight with a Tori Nelson, you know? The division's wide open now that Claressa's not there, so there are opportunities there that if super middleweight ain't getting the fucking job done, you go down to middleweight. It might be hard to make, it might take some acclimating, but it's the move and it's the only move.
One of them.
One of the only moves, I should say. It is a golden opportunity, though, and with Golden Boy Promotions behind her to help guide her career, steer her in the right direction, this, you know, she could really capitalize off of this. So, congratulations to Franchon Crews, whose future just got a little brighter than it already was. The reigning WBC super middleweight champion. In other news, Forbes made some news recently in regards to the highest paid athletes, and particular to the sport of boxing. It got a lot of attention. It got a lot of people talking, seeing just where some very familiar names, what are widely characterized as the biggest draws in the sport, stack up against each other. And coming in at number one, as we all know, is Canelo Alvarez. He is the top earning boxer and one of the top earning athletes of any kind overall, coming in at number four. Number four in the world and number one when it comes to the sport of boxing. When it comes to the sport of boxing, Anthony Joshua came in, ranked at a close second at number 2. Behind Anthony Joshua is Deontay Wilder. Now, we all know that the whole A-side, B-side thing is still a conversation that's floating around, that, Anthony Joshua having lost to Andy Ruiz, Wilder remaining undefeated and a world champion, how much ground does he gain as a result of that? Well, Wilder actually emerged on the list as the third highest earning boxer of any boxer in the sport. So, for anyone still interested in discussing the marquee value in association with what could be their fight, the A-sides, the B-sides, who deserves what based on what kind of numbers they've been putting up, they regularly put up, this is how they stack up against each other. And you can see that there's a discrepancy in what these guys are earning. You look over at what Anthony Joshua gets just from endorsements. Approximately $10 million. That's just endorsements, you understand. That's not even what he gets from boxing matches. That's just endorsements. You think about that, and you think about how what he's getting just from endorsements is around the same neighborhood as what Wilder just got for his last fight. What Wilder got for his last fight is anywhere in the realm between under $10 million or $12 million. There are several conflicting reports floating around, each giving a different number, but all the same. $10 million is, same neighborhood as what Wilder got for his last fight. And you think about that and how Anthony Joshua has just been getting that. He's been getting that just for endorsements. It's not even what he gets per fight. So the discrepancy between what the fighters have been earning is clear as day. And you think about what else could happen in the year and what earnings that might pose to both the fighters respective of each other. Wilder's supposed to be having a rematch with Luis Ortiz, and there has been talk that rematch may be sold as a pay-per-view. You think about that and you gotta wonder, how many buys can you generate for a rematch when the first fight was on regular cable? Are people really going to want to have to pay to see a repeat? $75 is $75. I'm sorry, but you got to wonder, how many people can you get to buy a fight that they saw already, arguably, for free? And then you think about Anthony Joshua's next fight before the year is out, a fight that I have no doubts is going to be even bigger than his last fight, the Andy Ruiz rematch. Whether he wins or he loses that fight, the fight itself is going to be an event. The fight is a fight that I think the world is going to stop and watch. They're going to be waiting for that fight because they want to know if there's any credibility to the rumors that maybe Anthony Joshua wasn't 100% in the first fight, and that's what costed him the fight, that he put on a brave face, decided to go out there anyway, having been concussed. There are all sorts of rumors, but at minimum, what I'm trying to characterize is there's a lot of people that are talking about this. There's gonna be that many more people that pay attention when that fight rolls around, so it may be twice as big as the first fight, because whether you're a fan of Anthony Joshua or you're one of his critics, you're one of his naysayers, one way or another, you're gonna be watching that fight. You think about what the fight could generate domestically in a domestic pay-per-view. You think about how many subscribers will subscribe to DAZN to see what happens in that fight. That maybe they're not interested in all these other fighters that you got signed, but they want to know what's going to happen with that fight. Any new fans that Andy Ruiz has garnered himself, they're going to want to see if lightning can strike twice and he can hold on to those belts against the guy that he took them from. A lot of people are going to be paying attention to that fight. It's going to generate a lot of money for Anthony Joshua before the year is out. I mean, it's just the truth. It's a predetermined split, ladies and gentlemen. That's all embedded into the contract. The initial contract that Andy Ruiz signed. So Joshua's going to get what he's going to get, whether he wins or he loses. And that will put further distance between what he earns and what Deontay Wilder earns. But I will say that this conversation overall in regards to A-sides and B-sides and gate revenue and marquee value, the whole conversation is a moot point. I mean, I could bring up how, Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury only generated about $3 million at the gate, whereas what Anthony Joshua generated at Madison Square Garden, that dwarfs, what Wilder and Fury put up together. I could bring up all that stuff, but at this point in the juncture, it really doesn't matter. It could be an exercise in futility, because the overall relevance of all that stuff is in regards to Wilder versus Joshua, and we don't know right now that that's a fight we're gonna see. It seemed a little bit more probable that the fight could happen maybe, before Anthony Joshua took that loss. But after he's taken that loss, you have to wonder, it's a legitimate question, that everything we've been talking about now hinges on whether or not Anthony Joshua can bounce back. So before we even get back into talking about A-sides and B-sides and revenue and marquee value and who's the real A-side and who's picking up steam and who deserves what, before we get back to having that conversation, Anthony Joshua has to bounce back first. Otherwise, that'd just be an exercise in futility, a waste of time, a conversation that's not worth having, because if Anthony Joshua can't bounce back, there goes that Wilder fight. There goes that entire conversation. I mean, I was honestly surprised how many reaction videos this got and how people were still using the whole Wilder versus Joshua A-side, B-side thing as a talking point. I was honestly surprised how many videos I saw circulating in regards to that subject when, you know what, at this point in the juncture, that's not even the focal point. That's not even the relevant conversation to be having. The relevant conversation to be having is whether or not Anthony Joshua can bounce back, because everything else and everything a Wilder versus Joshua fight encompasses, including the purse splits and what the fighters would be getting, everything in association with that fight now hinges on whether Anthony Joshua can even bounce back. So any A-side, B-side, whatever stuff, I don't even see how people are still interested in that conversation. I gather that it's likely coming from Wilder's fans who want to gloat, who want to talk about how their pony in the show is still undefeated and he's still a champion. But you know what? Whatever he is, he's still not earning more than that guy. And if that guy bounces back in what is a fight that might just be 2 times as big as his last fight, let alone anything Wilder might have going on, if he can bounce back, he will undoubtedly reclaim his position as not only the A-side to Deontay Wilder, but the A-side to just about everybody. Everybody. So that's, I think, where most of the attention needs to go to. Whether or not Anthony Joshua can bounce back, and if he does, what effect will that have thereafter?
Looking at that fight, now I saw Joshua fight Parker. I saw Joshua on television with Klitschko. The Joshua I saw on June 1st in Madison Square Garden was an imposter. It wasn't Joshua. It was somebody else. From what he was acting like before the fight, how he carried himself in the fight, that was not Anthony Joshua. I don't want to take anything away from Andy Ruiz, but the way I look at it, he didn't beat Joshua. He beat somebody else. I can't lie about that. I mean, you saw Joshua before. That wasn't Joshua.
Now, in keeping with the whole Anthony Joshua bouncing back theme, Bob Arum recently made these comments in regards to what he saw the night of the Andy Ruiz fight, and he's convinced that wasn't the Anthony Joshua that he saw in action before. And these comments from Bob Arum are in keeping with what a lot of people, what a lot of the fans, a lot of the pundits have been saying, that, you know what, that's just not the guy whose career I've been following. It's not consistent with what he's been doing, how he's been looking, and who he is to the weight class. And, this coming from Bob Arum, it's really saying something, because it's not like Bob Arum is sweet on Anthony Joshua, you understand. It's not like he's some big proponent to that guy. He's actually got a pony in the show. That pony's name is Tyson Fury, who's going to be in action this weekend. So for Bob Arum to be making these comments so soon to a fight that he's promoting involving his pony in the show, for Bob Arum to say these things, you've got to stop, you've got to think, look at what might be motivating the comments, and ask yourself if it's coming from Bob in a place that's real, that's honest, that's just telling you what he saw. I'll say that, Bob Arum, he doesn't necessarily hesitate to take shots at fighters that he used to promote. And he used to promote Andy Ruiz. And Bob doesn't make any bones about ribbing a guy that he used to promote that might have crossed the street to, another promoter. He doesn't make any bones about that shit. But at the end of the day, what Bob is saying, what he's saying specifically, what he's saying in particular, it is in keeping with a lot of the sentiments that the fans are expressing, that it more or less sounds like the same thing that you've been hearing, that, you know what, I don't know what was wrong with that guy, but from the ring walk to the final bell, or, the end of the fight, when he got starched, the whole time, this guy, he just don't look like himself. And to that, I'll say this. I'll say what I said before. If, in fact, something was wrong with Anthony Joshua the night of the fight, if, the rumors are true, he got hurt in sparring, or he was sick, or, something's wrong with this guy, he just didn't tell nobody. Whatever's going on, he has the opportunity to correct it in the rematch. And I'm not going to denigrate Andy Ruiz's victory to give Anthony Joshua some kind of a pass for looking the way that he looked, because at the end of the day, Andy Ruiz has got one job, and it's to win that fight. That's what he did, regardless of what's going on. He did his job, and I'm not going to take that away from him. If Anthony Joshua is, in fact, the kind of guy, the kind of fighter, the kind of champion that we all think he is, or at least we thought he was, if he really is that guy, and it's just that something was wrong on that night, then on another night, we should see the guy that we were expecting to see. So all those questions, we're past it. He lost the fight, ladies and germs. We're past it. It's over. And what we've got to think about now is the rematch.